Today we have with us Dr. Renuka Kumar, Academic Coordinator, Department of Social Work, DDCE, Utkal University, Odisha. Now I request Dr. Renuka Kumar to introduce our guest and continue the session forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Pradeep sir. Dear friends, a very good evening to all of you. I'm Dr. Renuka Kumar, Academic Consultant, Department of Social Work, Directorate of Distance and Continuing Education, Utkal University, Odisha. I welcome you all to the Gyanalok Saturday lecture series on social development issues and role of development professionals. Today's lecture is jointly organized by Gyanalok Trust and Department of Social Work, DDCE, Utkal University, Odisha. Today we have with us Dr. Sunil Kumar Mosala. Dr. Sunil Kumar Mosala has completed his MSW and LLB from Utkal University, Odisha. Additionally, he has completed his PhD in social work from Nagarjuna University, Andhra Pradesh. Dr. Mosala is a former Deputy Director of National Institute of Social Defense, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, Government of India, and deputed as a Joint Director of National Institute of Public Cooperation and Child Development, Ministry of Women and Child Development, Government of India. Additionally, he worked as lecturer of social work at National Institute of Social Work and Social Sciences, Bhubaneswar, Odisha for 7 years. During his professional career, Dr. Sunil Kumar had taken off a number of international assignments on substance prevention and participated as country representative in various international fora in and outside the country. He played a major role to collaborate with different national, international agencies, including United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, United Nations Program on HIV/AIDS, International Labour Organization, Family Health International, Colombo Plan, etc., to plan and implement programs on substance use and HIV/AIDS prevention. To his credit, he has published a number of articles both in national and international journals on children, youth, and substance use, and conducted a number of research studies at state and national levels on social forestry, substance abuse, HIV/AIDS issues, and so on. He has the skill of policy and program development, training and capacity building, research and documentation, leadership and team building, monitoring and evaluation, liaisoning and networking, conceptualization and implementation of web-based and database initiative, and introduction of innovative methods of training delivery. Out of his vast knowledge and experience on substance use, drug de-addiction, etc., today he will deliver on drug de-addiction and the NGO sector in India. On behalf of Gyanalok Trust, Department of Social Work, DDC, Utkal University, and all participants present in today's lecture, once again, I welcome Dr. Sunil Kumar Mosala and request to address the audience. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Renukaji. It's so nice to give a very elaborate introduction. It appears more than the lecture which I am supposed to share with you. Thanks a lot. It was very nice of you. And also thanks to Pradeep. I really admire your, appreciate your efforts for starting off this kind of activity, a series of lectures, along with the collaboration of Utkal University, Department of Social Work. It's something which has to be really appreciated. And thank you for inviting me for the session. Hardly having, I just thought I'll just share a little bit about what I have been working and what is this problem of addiction. This addiction as such, as you all know, that it's something that's not very new to many of you. All of you are in the social development field. And it's not a new term, or I mean, drug addiction as such is very common, and in Odisha also it's becoming very alarming increase of substance use. So this is one issue which we really, it's a great concern. It's a great concern for all of us, which we really have to think of it and how to go about it. There are many efforts that are being made, both at the national level and at the state level. Also in the Odisha state, also many organizations, as you say, the topic signifies the role of NGOs in Odisha state. A lot of voluntary organizations are working with the support of Ministry of Social Justice. Now, I as
sorry to intervene. Actually, which slide I should share first?
Yeah, just okay. Slides, maybe I'd just like to give a brief introduction and then maybe go ahead with the slides. Okay. So, this addiction as such, is now becoming a big problem, as we all know. It's been increasing. It is entering into it's permeating into different sections of society. And the worst affected are the youth and the children, which really we have to think of when we talk about future generations. So that's with that perspective, the government of India has been thinking for a long time. In fact, to give a brief background, this particular issue of substance use has started long back in 1985 with the introduction of this enactment of this act called the Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act, which talks mostly of illegal drugs, that is opium, cocaine, and other pharmaceutical drugs, which are derivatives, which are synthetic, non-synthetic, semi-synthetic drugs, which have caused a lot of havoc to the society in consumption. India as such has become not just a transit country, as you must be knowing, you must be aware of it, that India is in the midst of the Golden Triangle and the Golden Crescent, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Iran on one side, where all the heroin and opium products are brought into. It is a transit route to go to different other parts of the globally. Similarly, also in the eastern side, you have this Laos, then Burma and Thailand, where again the drugs pass on through. The transit route to other countries. While this being a transit country, it has also become a big consumer country. So with this consumption of drugs, the worst affected are, again, as I said, that youth and children. Besides that, of course, alcohol is a problem, which we have this prohibition, which prohibition has never works. We all know that. But alcohol and this drugs as such, under the broad, under the broad category, it has been, we have named it as substance use, where it includes not only the drugs which come under the NDPS Act, but also alcohol, nicotine, and other tobacco products. So this is briefly when we talk about the drug scenario. Now, when we talk about the Government of India's efforts, the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment have been given the nodal responsibility to coordinate all the programs of drug prevention. And on the other hand, drug prevention aspects. On the other hand, you have this medical component of drug addiction, which is mainly dealt with the Ministry of Health. Although we, in the Ministry of Social Justice, where we do our provide services through NGOs, we also have a medical component, which is only for a short while. But serious cases all again is under the purview of prerogative of the Ministry of Health. The other thing is, in order to say, as I was telling you, that most of these are illegal drugs. It is taken the sale or manufacture or production, all these aspects are strictly followed under the NDPS Act, where you cannot you cannot cultivate opium, or you cannot manufacture drugs or whatever it is without the licensing of the government. in I mean, like the opium cultivation mostly found in states of UP, MP, Rajasthan. These are the major states where opium cultivation is done. Whereas cannabis as such is found um, all over the country, most of the parts of the country, and it's really available. And most of the people use it also as a cultural thing. Now, before I could start off with all these narcotics, just briefly, I would just like to classify all these drugs under two major heads. That is, one is the groups. One is what we call it as depressants. The other we call it as stimulants. The one which slows down the central nervous system is what we call it as depressants. They are like, suppose like they all the narcotic drugs. Narcotic drugs are basically opium derivatives, opioids or opium derivatives, which come under the narcotics. So all these are depressants, and also alcohol is considered to be a depressant. Whereas the stimulants are like cocaine. Then you have this, um, I mean, cannabis product, bhang, ganja, and all those. Then we have this caffeine and um, nicotine. All these tobacco products are also considered to be the stimulants. So these broadly stimulants and depressants, they will stimulate that which speed up the central nervous system. I mean, beyond the normal functioning of central nervous system, if it speeds up, then it's something which is abnormal, okay, which affects a physiological as well as the psychological aspect of any individual, any human being. Similarly, when it slows down the central nervous system, it leads to it is called it falls under the category of depressants, and this is something which is again dangerous. So these two categories, these two the broad categories where all these drugs come under each of these things. So when we talk about any kind of treatment or medication, it depends upon what is it. I mean, whether stimulants or depressants. Depressants usually have got a high rate of tolerance, withdrawals, and also what do you call? I mean, it needs really a special, different approach while treating these kind of patients. So broadly, I mean, this is in nutshell. I told you about the drugs. Now, the Ministry of Social Justice, as I was telling, going back to the Ministry of Social Justice, the government of India has given the nodal responsibility to look into the preventive aspects of uh, the drug abuse, the substance use in the country. And we have been doing a lot of initiatives we have been taking up. And I represent an institute called National Institute of Social Defense under the Ministry of Social Justice, where we have a National Center for Drug Abuse Prevention, and we give a technical support or or advice to the ministry in formulating the projects, in formulating the schemes under the ministry, which presently it runs through various centers, various treatment centers all over the country, in collaboration with NGOs. And then we have this Ministry of Health, where they have a separate center called the National Drug Dependence Treatment Center, which is purely medical medical management of any of addiction. And then the other thing is, of course, the Department of Revenue, Excise, Customs, Police, all these are involved when it comes to supply reduction there. So this is broadly about the Government of India's approach. Now let's go quickly to the slides. Pradeep? Pradeep, are you
Yes, sir.
there? Can you just open
Which,
the slides? Just show me the second, third slide, third or fourth slide.
so this one?
Fourth slide. I mean not this. This is regarding not this. The other
Okay.
PPT.
This one?
Did you get this? Yes. So you can just see that this is all about the categories of substances that are being used. They are both psychotropic as well as they come under the psychotropic or the narcotic drugs, or those which have this psychoactive features. I mean, like it affects the either the psychological dependence or the physiological dependence. Broadly, they are opioids, which is from the opium plant. It can be from the flower, it can be from the resin, depending upon the type of addiction. The type of substance, like brown sugar. Then we have this heroin. And then we have this other pharmaceutical drugs made from opioids. Then we have this cannabis plant, which is cannabis sativa, what we call it. That is where all these um, ganja and bhang and hemp and hashish, charas, all these are the products of cannabis. Then we have these stimulants like cocaine, which is again from a plant called cocoa. It's not found here. Basically, in South America, you find this cocaine, and it's that is where we call it as that is also called as a silver triangle, because it's Peru, Cuba, and one more country, I think Argentina. These three countries, they have the silver triangle where this cocaine is. A lot of cocoa plants are produced, and you get this product of cocaine, and cocaine gets smuggled. Trafficking in our country also a whole lot, and you hear a lot of things which have been happening all over the country. The recent cases, court cases with regard to drug trafficking, we hear in the newspapers also what all products, how much of cocaine is being caught, how much of ganja is being caught, how much of opium products. So these are some of the type of substances that are commonly used. Then you have the sedatives, which we normally with knowledge, so we tend to abuse these sedatives, like diazepam or Alprax or any of these things. And we have these hallucinogens, which is again marijuana, LSD. These are again mind altering drugs, which also has got adverse effects. And tobacco, as you all very well know. Then the other thing is the volatile solvents. Volatile solvents is something which is again is a growing problem, especially among the children on the streets. You find these inhalers, the fluids in the typing. The whatever fluids you get, those fluids, and this petrol, kerosene. These are some of the things which either they sniff or they drink, or even like let us say even the cough syrup, which is again a part of opioids, codeine and all that. They're also commonly found among the street children. So these are the very various categories of substance use, substances that are being used in the country. So these are alcohol. Then you have these opioid drugs, which are brown sugar, heroin, afim. Pharmaceutical drugs, as I told you, codeine, morphine. Opioid again, as it's of a medical significance. That's why the cultivation is done in our country, and with vast, it meets the requirement of hospitals when it comes to morphine and other such opioid products. Then we have this cannabis, which is widely found in most of our places. In Odisha, it's very common, and it has got some cultural significance like bang and all that, ganja. Then we have this charas, which is taken, charas and hashish, which is taken from the resin of the cannabis plant. We have the sleeping pills, cough syrups, painkillers. Then we have other substances like these are, of course, very dangerous, and which is a recent phenomena. Amphetamine type stimulants, cocaine, and Pradeep, I'm sure you're seeing the slide, the next slide.
Yes, sir. Yes, it is visible, sir.
Other substance stimulants like cocaine and ATS, hallucinogens. Hallucinogens are MDMA, what we call it, or LSD. These are also very, mind, again, as I told you, mind altering, or even the thought process, the perceptions, all that dissolutions, all these takes place because of these hallucinogens. Then inhalants, of course, is very common among the children. Besides this, the other growing problem, which you all know, which we all, I mean, the country has taken a very big thing about this. One of the major outcome of, result of the substance use is the injecting drug use, which has led to HIV/AIDS, which is another major issue where a lot of efforts have been taken by the government, both the central and state. A lot of activities are going on with regard to injecting drug use. There's an assessments made, surveillance made by NACO and also the state itself regarding this extent of injecting drug use. So this is briefly about the type of addiction that we find all over the country. Quickly, if you'd like to, yes, okay. So what are the common reasons which we all know is one is that peer pressure influence, that because of the friends, because of the peer pressure of the peers, that we tend to land up in all these so drugs, alcohol, or tobacco, or maybe much hard drugs, from softer drugs to hard drugs. Then it's the curiosity also. I mean, people tend to be, especially in the adolescent age, where the curiosity is at the prime level. That is the time where where the children tend to experiment with drugs, and that's how it happens. I mean, they become a victim of substance use. Then the next is the other factors are other social reasons. It can be social or environmental reasons. That is, one is the family environment. If the family breakdown is there, if there's any disturbances in the family, if if no proper support by parents or by kith and kin, then naturally the child is subject to uh, victim of substance use, as well as also even any other, even if you talk about a married gentleman or any women, or I mean, hardly, of course, the percentage of women and men is quite less. I mean, comparison is lot of difference, which I'll show you later. But this is so family is one important factor which makes a lot of difference in influencing the substance use. The other is, of course, easily availability of drugs. Now, as you know, in Odisha, especially in Bhubaneswar and Cuttack, what I could get is that in all the slum areas, the brown sugar and heroin is rampantly available. And there's networks, heavy networks, starting from small groups to larger mafia groups where this is going on, and people are, the drugs are available either in pawn shops or to particular, certain mediators or peddlers, small peddlers, where the drugs are available. And at least about 40 to 50 slums are there in Bhubaneswar, most probably. I mean, I'm just telling you about briefly in the state of Odisha and especially in Bhubaneswar, whereas all over the country it's very widely available. Drugs are available in different corners of the country, and that's why people are becoming victim to this.
So your mic has been muted. Please unmute.
Since when?
Yeah,
Hello?
it is audible now.
Okay. So
Yeah, it is audible now.
Okay. So one is the easy availability of drugs, which, as I was telling you, it's available in different nook and corner of most of the cities, and in Bhubaneswar slums, it's very common. Then the people also, let it be the laborers, let it be the youth, let it be the student youth, let it be the college youth, let it be slum dwellers, let it be children of the streets. They're all having access to drugs, because there are small peddlers, there are larger peddlers, there are the pawn shops, there are these different sources where your people are able to go and get the drugs. Or otherwise, if not, they go on to, of course, there's a restriction now of OTC, over-the-counter medicines. But that is also another thing where these children tend to buy these cough syrups, codeine products, and that again is another intoxicant. So these are some of the things which are also factors responsible for abuse of drugs. Then, of course, as I told you earlier, the drug-using friends. There are, I mean, those who have this peer pressure, the friends who are abusing drugs or using drugs, they tend to influence, and that the whole system as such, the family, if it's in a bad, if it's in a breakdown, or if drugs are available, or if the drugs are easily accessible, or if you have friends who are having a drug use background, then there's a lot of scope for any person to become a victim of substance use. The other thing is also, the other factor is also the low frustration of the tolerance level, where certain individuals, because of the psychological position or the physical weaknesses or whatever it might be, they'll end up in taking drugs. Okay, they don't have much of, they cannot tolerate the the frustration that they suffer from, and because of studies, or maybe because of jobs, or maybe because of the loss or whatever it is. So these people tend to take drugs. Another important thing is the depression or anxiety which any individual suffers. That also leads to drugs. So these are some of the common reasons. Various factors are there, many factors are there, but these are some of the major factors and very commonly found factors responsible for substance use. Next. Some of the terms which we tend to have an understanding is very important, because when we talk about drugs, we should be able to understand what exactly are different, what it signifies. When we talk about use, we as drugs, we use for medical purposes, for health reasons, whatever prescribed drugs. So that is how it is. We use the term use. If we use that in excess, like suppose if you are advised to take twice a day of painkillers, and we'll end up in taking 3 or 4, that is what we call it as misuse. Now, the abuse is something which is illegal. Anything which is illegal and which is not allowed by the system, that is called abuse. Okay. So all the, like suppose all the narcotic drugs which you talk about, all the psychotropic substances like cocaine or hallucinogens, or these are all some of the drugs which you tend to abuse or abuse it. So which is illegal. Even alcoholism also, to certain amount, to certain areas is confined. So that's again considered to be another form of substance of abuse. Now, the other thing which you're talking about, harmful use, is something which we are talking about. See, once an individual, there's a cycle which I'll show you subsequently what it is. There are a lot of harms involved while abusing drugs. It can affect his individual self, his physical or his mindset, his perception towards others, his relationships, or it might affect his family, or it might affect his studies or occupation, or whatever it is. Okay, so that is what, or the community at large. So that is what we call it as harmful use, which in detail we'll talk about it. Then this comes the addiction. Dependence. We start depending upon the drugs. Individual who goes beyond a certain limit, he tends to slowly depend on that, and without which he cannot stay. That is the ultimate, which leads to the ultimate result of being an addict. What we call it as addiction. So this this tendency of dependence leads to addiction. So this is all about what are the common terms that we use while dealing with individuals who are victims or not victims, or to what extent they're victims of substance use, is something which we can assess through these common terms which we make. Next slide. Harmful use, as given here, it's nothing but the use of drugs in a pattern which results in physical or psychological harm. The person continues to use the addict in spite of the harms that he encounters during his abuse. Whatever drugs that he's being taken, he will continue taking it in spite of all the difficulties or harms that are associated. Let it be physical, let it be psychological, let it be anything. So the social, legal, and occupational harm apart from physical and psychological harm. But still, he is not a dependent or addicted to substance. He is in the process of becoming a dependent or addict. But harmful use is something which is in the middle level, where there's a risk to become an addict or a dependent. A dependent person on drugs. Next. Addiction or dependence. Now, this is something which is really at the final stage of the addiction cycle, where these are some of the features which you find. Syndrome characterized by physical, psychological, and behavioral symptoms. One is craving. There's a lot of craving or a strong desire, sense of compulsion. Anyhow, he has to take the drug. He has to, without which he cannot stay. He goes on crying, he can beating himself, cutting his hands or fingers or sometimes veins or whatever he does, all kinds of things because of the craving that that's what we call it as a withdrawal. I mean, subsequently we'll talk about it, prioritization. So when you talk about prioritization, that means that he is neglecting all the regular, what expected norms of being a self, a normal human being. He neglects his self. I mean, the interest, maybe schooling, maybe his office, maybe his, as a parent, maybe as a, being an obedient child or whatever it might be, or not doing or not involved in sports activities. So this is something which, again, his priorities change and he starts neglecting his regular social life, his family life, his individual self. And then his priority is only to take drugs. The third aspect is the tolerance. As now, if he starts off with 1 gram of heroin, slowly after a few, as he continues using it, it can become 2 grams in a day, then 3 grams in a day, or 5 grams in a day, or maybe once in a day to twice in a day or thrice in a day. So this is how it becomes. So the tolerance level to the substance increases. The more the substances, the more he is able to get that kick, because with the small amount of 1 gram which he was using it 1 month back will not be able to satisfy him. So his consumption levels increase. So that is what we call it as the tolerance levels, which increases as because of this addiction. I mean, he's becoming dependent on that. Then there is this withdrawal of cessation of substances. The moment you stop giving available, if the drugs are not available, or if it's not able to get the drugs, then ultimately you get all these withdrawal symptoms. It can be in the form of just psychological, or shouting, or beating, or making behavioral problems, or physiological, which can be also dangerous. It can be mentally a thing, or physically also. It's withdrawal symptoms come, and then there's a tendency for it's a risky phenomenon when it comes to withdrawal. Then the next is the loss of control over substance taking behavior. He doesn't have any control how to take, what to take. I mean, whatever substances available, you just like that kick, that feeling of kick, that should continue with him. Then the last, of course, has the same thing. I mean, it's like he continues, he or she continues using the substances in spite of all the harmful effects that whatever at the individual level, or at the family level, or at the community level. This is the cycle. See, first, when we talk about any person, whether a child, adolescent child, or a youth, or any particular age group, first they start off, usually it's at the adolescent stage which starts off. I have seen cases which starts with the age of 8 years also, and it's become very common among above 8 years to below 17. It's widespread. So they start off with the experimentation. They start off with experimentation of taking, like, let us say, cigarette or whatever it is. Then they go off to alcohol. Then like that, they start experimenting with drugs. It can be that somebody has got at the beginning of the career, of the drug career only, they might start out with opium only. We don't, there are instances, but bhang and ganja and all are very common. So for fun, for pleasure, for social life and all that, they experimented with their peer groups. then the next stage is, of course, the occasional regular use. So, like suppose even if you talk about alcohol, many of us have this habit of alcohol. Some starts with the experiment with a glass of beer with a couple of friends or maybe a group of friends. Then ultimately you start meeting them weekly or monthly, and then it becomes an occasional drink or irregular use. Then the next stage is, of course, the regular use, which you go on meeting your friends on a regular basis. If not week, if not month, if not every day, at least twice or thrice in a week, then it goes on increasing, maybe daily. So that becomes a regular use. Then this regular use is he's at a risk factor. So that stage is very important when we talk about interventions. And this regular use leads to dependency or addiction. So he or she will start depending totally on using the drugs or alcohol, without which they cannot stay. They have this craving, they have this withdrawal, they have any other high level of tolerance, and this leads to dependency addiction. And they are not a normal person. They suffer from addiction. Has got multifactorial problems, multiple problems. Okay, that what we call it as dependence. Next, Pradeep. Yeah. So here you see the cycle, which the career, the drug use career, which I told you, from experimentation till dependence, that cycle. It starts off usually with starting with alcohol or tobacco. Somebody starts off with alcohol or tobacco. It starts with tobacco or alcohol. Then it leads to ganja or bhang and all that. They start taking, or that gulla, Odisha, you get that gullas and all that from tobacco. Then gutka to gullas to bhang, all these kind of things. And slowly they might land up, if they have access, if they are vulnerable areas, vulnerable places, or if they're exposed to any of these drug user friends, or maybe the peddling somewhere points where you get these drugs, then they are exposed to this heroin or smack. Okay, so this is this stage, of course, is a very dangerous stage. Marijuana, of course, to a large extent, yeah, but still, the worst is, of course, the heroin smack drug, where they'll end up in taking brown sugar or heroin, and this particular use of drugs in excess leads to also injecting drug use. If they start injecting the drug use, they're not satisfied with just orally, so they are sniffing or oral or whatever mode of abuse. I finally find that is more than that is directly getting into the bloodstream, so they'll end up in injecting drug use. And that injecting drug use, as you all know, it's a very complicated problem, because it leads to HIV/AIDS because of the sharing of needles. Yes, next, Pradeep. Hello, yeah. So this is all. This is till now, as I've told you, that's briefly about the drug scenario. Now, this is something which is when we talk about understanding or working with drug addicts, we should know what all are the categories of people which we have to take care of, and what are the interventions that is available. Now, this is a triangle. Okay, this is a triangle, and if you can see clearly, a larger section of the globally, it's a INCB report. It's a International Narcotic Control Bureau report, which says that 95% of the public or the people do not take drugs. Okay, so they are what we call it traffic lights. We have no green, amber, and red zone. So they are in the green zone. So they don't take drugs, and they are and these are the people where you need to do preventive activities. Like suppose if you talk about school children, if you talk about children in slums, if you talk about the youth groups in colleges and schools, if you talk about the communities, slums, wherever there's a vulnerability, there's a risk involved of abuse of drugs, or availability of drugs, or access to drugs or alcohol, then you need to have proper preventive educative measures, what we call it as preventive education, where we all do, and we as social workers have got a pivotal role in this. by doing this preventive education and reaching out to people, to large sections of the people, and talking about the ill effects of drug use. Then the second category is, of course, as I told you, there is this people who are regular use or occasional use or social use or whatever. They ultimately land up in having, I mean, since their frequency of abuse is increasing, so this frequency of abuse leads to some kind of pathological problems, some kind of physical problems, or some kind of psychological problems. Like what? Like, let us say, pathological. It might be a liver problem. It might be congestive respiratory problem. It might be any such issues because of regularly using drugs or alcohol. That is one thing on a physiological aspect. And the psychological also, they start either neglecting the studies or not going to for play or sports, or not doing the office work properly. So these are some of the things which, some of the symptomatic behavior which you find during at this particular stage, where that the percentage is of about 5%. 5% actually. No, this is of course, yeah, about 5% of the people. Then you have this, the last, there's some figure problem here. I think 90 and here 5%. And less than that, and those who are vulnerable, the worst affected ones are they, because of the regular use, because of this regular use, and the dependency starts increasing on the drug use, the frequency of drug abuse or alcohol increases, and they totally start depending upon it. And that is where they need treatment. What do we call it as addiction? They come to the point of addiction or dependent drugs. Okay, people with drug use disorders, they have these disorders, and that is a small percentage which come under if you talk about, I mean, the better part is the green signal, the amber signal, and the red signal is the drug dependence. Yeah, next, Pradeep. Yeah. These are the harms associated, psychological harms, occupational harms, legal, social, familial, family, physical harms, some of those things. Next. It show better and brief. Next slide, please. Yeah, psychological, forgetfulness, lack of confidence, stress, mood swings, irritability, depression, anxiety. So these are some of the psychological harms of substance use. Either if you're a regular user, also you suffer some with some of these behavioral problems, or it is extreme in the case of dependence, drug dependence. Then you have this so family or social problems. You have the conflicts with the family. Then you have this occupational problems, either in the job. Then financial problems. Either you turn to be, you see, one more big problem of these drug dependencies, they land up in crime. So drugs and crime is another major issue. So then it becomes a legal issue. One is, of course, the trafficking of drugs with small peddlers, or even the persons who are caught having drugs also. They also tend to become, I mean, that's also another, because they are taking illegal drugs, they are prone for any legal action. And also the crime that they commit for in order to get money, in order to get drugs, they commit a lot of crimes, and or maybe they do a lot of this thing. So that's one thing. So that's the issue of go back once. Let me yeah, all the harms associated with it. Now, broadly, to cater to this, Pradeep, are we having time? Hello.
Yes. Please
Yes,
continue, sir.
Yes. Go ahead with the slide. Go ahead with the slide. Pradeep, go ahead with the slide.
Yes, sir. I'm
So here in the previous slide, as I've shown you, what are the different categories of interventions that is required. One is the general public, where you need to prevent the substance use, the initiation of substance use. If you want to control substance use, then the more awareness, the more preventive education is spread among different parts of the different sections of the society, then it's very vital. So preventive education and preventive programs are very important while talking about primary, what we call it as primary prevention. Okay, it's a health model. It's the same WHO model, which most of you must be knowing it, primary, secondary, tertiary model. So the primary prevention is something which is very important, where the general public need to be aware of the ill effects of substance use. And for that, we need to have a lot of preventive education programs with different sections in schools, colleges, and use all these networks like NYKs, NSS, use all these Panchayat Raj institutions, all these institutions which are there, you have to cover so that you'll be able to do some kind of, information dissemination on the ill effects of substance use. That is at the primary level. In the secondary level, we are talking about the people who are, as I told you, there are people who are the social drinkers who are, or maybe they'll end up in having regular drinking, meeting, partying and all that on a regular basis. So they require, again, they're also at risk to become addicts. So for that, you need to have not just talking about ill effects of drug, but more of counseling and providing them with alternatives in form of sports or in terms of career orientation or whatever it might be. And counseling is one important aspect of the secondary prevention. The final, of course, the tertiary prevention, that is what we talk about, treatment and rehabilitation for those who have become addicts, those who have become drug dependents. So that is all about the whole thing. Now, when we talk about drug dependency, we also talk about, when we talk about drug abuse overall at the national level, we are talking about not just confining to drug, reducing the demand of drugs or giving treatment. We are also talking about how best the supply also can be controlled. Controlled. So that supply control, again, there's a law for that, NDPS Act, as I was telling you, and there is this Prohibition Act also, which talks about restricting alcohol, and also the excise and customs, which makes restrictions in terms of having wine shops or in terms of distancing from schools or wine shops or any such. So the vulnerability of abuse will be less. So that's how what we call it as supply reduction. So the strategies broadly are under these three categories, which you can see on the slide. The first one is, of course, the drug demand reduction strategies, which aims to reduce the desire to use drugs and to prevent, reduce, or delay the initiation of drug use. So this is very important. One is we are talking about, when we talk about preventive education, we had to think of how best you can delay the onset of drugs. Like in as I told you, even at the age of 8, 10, the children start abusing drugs. So that is the age group where you have to catch from 10 to 17 years or 8 to 17 years, 15 years, or whatever the age group is, where there's a risk of experimenting, of curiosity, of peer pressure. That is the time where you had to catch hold and you had to help the individuals, the children or the youth, in not going for drugs. So this is what we call it as early initiation or early identification. Then the next is, of course, in this drug demand reduction, we talk about also not only just the preventive, as I told you, the treatment part also of treatment and rehabilitation of drug addicts, which we are doing at a national level by having various centers. Then there is this supply reduction strategies, which talks about how to restrict the supply of drugs, especially opium, morphine, cannabis. Cannabis, of course, we cannot do. It's widely grown, but still there are restrictions. Government is making all efforts for restricting the cannabis use. If anywhere any smuggling or any trafficking is going on with regard to ganja, it is brought into the notice, and a lot of crores and crores of money find people getting caught of ganja or bhang, and they're not bhang exactly, but ganja especially. Then you have this, of course, opium is a big business, is a big growing business where a lot of money is involved, and a lot of, again, confiscation takes place of this drugs. So there is so ultimately it is the police, the customs, the excise, the revenue department, all these are the concerned ministries. and they have a nodal department called the Narcotics Control Bureau, which coordinates all the supply reduction strategies. Okay, I mean, with regard to trafficking of drugs, I mean, with regarding to licensing of opium cultivation, with regarding to manufacturing of chemical, pharmaceutical drugs. There, again, the DGCI is involved, drug control for drug control of India. You know, DG, Director General Control of India, Drug Controller of India. So they with regard to pharmaceutical drugs. So all these are under the control and they restrict only to the extent that is required for medical use. Beyond the medical use is anything which is used or available is illicit. So that is how the government through its various departments coordinated by Narcotics Control Bureau is taking care of the supply reduction strategy. Now, the new concept of new means it's already about a decade or a decade and a half, or maybe more than that, that this concept of harm reduction has come, where you find these opiate users, the opium users, you know, they are unable to become normal. Most of the cases, 80 to 90% of cases are relapse. They relapse. They again fall back to, even if you give them treatment, you give them a lot of interventions, medical, psychological, counseling, everything. In spite of it, they land up again. Once they go back to the community or once they go back to their workplace or to the same surroundings, to their families or friends, then they tend to become a victim again to drug abuse. So, so there's finally this relapse is becoming a big issue among the addicts, and especially more with the opiate addicts. So for that, with the experience in different parts of the globally and in India also, the alternatives or options when taken is best is you cannot just restrict, you cannot just talk and tell them, give them treatment, whatever treatment we give, medical treatment, and then whatever psychological support, that will not suffice, because there's a lot of withdrawal problems with this category of people. There's a lot of tolerance level and withdrawal problems of these opiate users. So for that, you need to have some kind of substitute. So what we call it a substitution therapy, which we give them oral. So instead of going for injecting, which is shared by different individuals, and then that leads to more complications called AIDS and all that. So in order to avoid that, we have this what you call this oral substitution, where in form of tablets, we call it naltrexone or buprenorphine, which are given, which are given as alternatives to reduce the harm. I mean, see, like suppose if you talk about cigarettes, we tell no, we advise also our friends, Array, you're smoking 10 days in a day, why don't you reduce to 5 days in a day? That kind of thing. That's nothing but a harm reduction. So similarly here also, it's a similar kind of thing. So that slowly he will be, because suddenly stopping him or making him stop from addiction is something which is not possible, especially for the opiate users, because there's a high level of dependency and high level of withdrawals. So for that reason, you need to have alternatives. The other options, of course, you know that there is this needle sharing. To avoid that needle sharing, you provide free syringes. Then you give the substitution therapy, oral substitution therapy, what we call it as OST. So these are some of the things which have come up and which is becoming very vital, very important, and it's becoming a part of the policy of the government also, because that of the government. Okay, so that's it. As I told you, the supply, it's regulated because of this regulated, rules and regulations and all that, alcohol, then medications, all these are taken under control by the customs or excise or otherwise the drug controller of India. Then, of course, not many states are successful in total prohibition, but there are efforts being made. And for everything, there is this, there is a very clearly spelled out rules sections under NDPS Act, which talks about what is the nature of punishment. I mean, to what extent it can be punishment. And for persons who are addicts, who are small-time addicts, who are small peddlers, or who with the 5 grams of small quantity drugs if they have in their hand, and if they caught, and if they are addicts, then they are they are allowed to take treatment under various sections and not punishment as such. Okay, but in other cases, most other cases, you get from 10,000 to 1 lakh to 10 lakhs to 10 years imprisonment, or maybe lifetime also, depending upon the degree of trafficking that he has done, he or she has done illegal drugs. Okay, next. Next. Pradeep.
Yes, sir. Yes, I'm doing.
Yeah, so these are broadly the harmful strategies: supply of needles, harm reduction strategies, supply of needles, opioid substitution. Then, but whatever you're giving, whether it is buprenorphine, OST, or what I talked about, the oral substitution instead of injecting drug use. Okay, all this depends upon, all this can be given subject to medical supervision. So medical supervision is purely done by doctors, and only in the, like, suppose in most of the treatment centers which ministry is giving is all NGOs. Okay, but here the recognized medical hospitals only are allowed to give such substitution or opioid substitution therapy or harm reduction strategy. Okay, next. This, of course, is our prime thing where we talk about NGOs becoming a pivotal role. The primary, as I told you, drug demand reduction is primary prevention is aimed at young people to discourage initiation drug use, where we talk about how best we can educate them, how best we can prevent at a very early age, either in the slums or in the schools or in the colleges, so that they would not become a victim of drug abuse. What are the various methods that we have to think of? What are the various alternatives in terms of sports, in terms of information, in terms of and proper, like whatever the school management as such should also look into the behavioral patterns of the children in the schools. If there's any, if you find some kind of deviation from the normal life, then we have to think of seriously of identifying them. And if found to be some kind of initiating drugs and all that, then immediately there's a need to intervene, some kind of intervene and give them support in terms of early intervention, in terms of counseling or meeting the parents or whatever it might be. So that becomes very important. So that's what we call it a primary level. And primary level also is not just schools or colleges, but also at the community level, how best we can reach out to the people. So outreach is another big problem, issue, which we have to think of. See, these are the areas where we as developmental professionals, as social workers, we are supposed to do this. Most of the demand reduction strategies are done by the professional, the master, either the people who are from social work background or from psychology background, who does all this counseling, outreach, motivational enhancement. All these are some of the activities which, because when you talk about an addict going before becoming an addict, a regular user, if you had to motivate him, you need to have some kind of skills. You need to communicate well. You need to understand the problem well. You need to understand able to understand the person well. You have to have a kind of one-to-one kind of relationship where you'll be able to understand better. So these are some of the things which is very important, and that's how it is. Okay, treatment is something which is again component of it is medical. It can be a 3-month program in which initially starts off with medical, because as a person comes to the treatment center, he needs medical advice. All his vital statistics is taken into consideration and seen if everything is proper. Then give him all the support that is required, medical support, and then accordingly plan out the program, which can be 1 month, which can be 2 months, which can be 3 months program, where he has to be in the treatment center and undergo all counseling, educative sessions, then skills, behavioral skills, behavioral therapies, all that contingent management. Okay, by giving him some kinds of rewards, and then of course. So cognitive learning, all these are some of the various techniques that are involved while giving treatment. Yes, next, quickly. Pradeep?
Yes, sir. Actually, it is.
So prevention, as I told you, family, parenting skills, school, early education, social skills, community, alcohol and tobacco policies. Workplace is another big issue. We have workplace prevention programs where we can use the unions, the trade unions, or any of those unions which are there in the workplace, and then take their support, take the support of the management, and then think of some preventive strategies. Then, of course, health sector, which is more brief interventions, which can be in form of drop-in centers. We cannot always provide all the treatment centers with a huge infrastructure. So we can do we can have a kind of a drop-in center where people come on the morning. Like, you must be aware of drop-in for daycare centers for old age, or for women, or whatever it is, there where they spend the whole day doing some positive work. Okay, so similarly here also you talk about brief interventions. Next year, then you have this media campaigns, of course, very important. But again, treatment modalities. Basic funda of drug addiction is that drug abuse or addiction is a psychosocial and medical problem. So when you're talking about interventions, it involves psychological interventions, it involves social interventions, social in the sense involving family, involving teachers, involving school, involving workplace, involving the community at large. So that is social part. Then the psychological part is, of course, the individual level, the counseling that is required, the communication level, the motivation that is required to, the enhanced motivation enhancement, which you talk about, learning process. All these are some of the things psychological. Yes, medical, of course, the treatment which initially is given for an addict. Medical management, it can be short term, especially for opioid users. Then it can be long term medical management, alcoholics or whoever. You need to have a long term. 3 months stay or 6 months stay, or maybe after going back also post follow-up kind of management. All that is long-term management. Then the last one is, of course, the physical harms, which is, of course, let us say somebody suffering from liver disease, somebody suffering from heart disease, somebody suffering because of, all the physiological problems which arise because of abuse of alcohol or abuse of drugs. So that requires a total medical intervention. Next. This is the psychological therapy, as I told you, counseling. Go back. Counseling, then the motivation enhancement, the relax, then cognitive behavioral therapy. These are some of the terms which I told you that the drug addict has to be motivated properly in order to withdraw himself from taking drugs. Then how best you can prevent relapse. Okay, what are the circumstances that made him that can lead to relapse? So those conditions you have to work on it. Then cognitive behavioral therapy is something which, like suppose managing his money, managing his temper, managing his anger, management of all these, what we call it as cognitive behavioral therapy. Then contingent management is nothing but giving them awards. Like suppose you for 2 or 3 days you don't touch this, you don't touch that, then you're given with some kind of award. Then that is something which is contingent. So these are some of the psychological therapies. Next, support groups. Alcohol. You have this Alcoholic Anonymous. You have this Narcotic Anonymous support groups, which while sitting together, while they interact with each other, they are in a better position to share with them, come out with whatever emotions or whatever suppression of emotions which they are suffering from, or the problems they're suffering from. Once they share out with other people, and once they find out from the others also are recovering, you come to know, then it becomes a process where you'll be able to slowly come out of the addiction. That helps. Alcoholic Anonymous or Narcotic Anonymous, or what we call it, Al-Anons. Al-Anons is for adolescent children, drug addicts who are joined together and share with each other. So these are the 3 categories which we find social support groups. And the most important thing is, in the support groups also, what we call it as co-dependents. Co-dependents are the family members, the mother, father, wife, children, or whoever, the siblings. They all can be very supportive in helping the individual drug addict to come out of addiction, because the type of support that they give is very vital to come out of, to recover better. Okay. Next. Rehabilitation, of course, once the treatment is there, see, it's a long-term process. If you want that individual not to relapse, and to happily reintegrate into society, into this family, go back to his family and be a normal citizen, go back to society and be a normal citizen. Then what are the various measures? You should have a aftercare or follow-up, proper follow-up or aftercare services provided by the treatment center. We should have a kind of vocational training, life skills training, which I was telling you, how best he can manage his finances, how best he can manage his anger, how best he can manage his emotions. All these are some of the life skills training. Then employment opportunities, if possible. Then family interventions. I mean, how best the family can be involved in the whole process of rehabilitation. Next, yes. Next, go ahead. Yes, these are again the same thing. It can be the rehabilitation when it comes to medical cannabis. It can be an inpatient or an outpatient. That means within the hospital setting, or maybe come to the center, take the treatment and go back to the family. It can be a 3 months full stay or 1 month full stay in the center, where you have a daily routine and you have this medical treatment, psychosocial treatment inside the campus, inside that hospital, or otherwise you can come as and when that is required. Usually this is done also through drop-in centers. Okay. So again here, as he says, no, that I mean, it's drug users rehabilitation, such a thing that everybody would not like to have the vocation, because he might be a carpenter, he might, and if you give him training in tailoring, there's no point of it. So you had to really think of what type of rehabilitation programs, what type of vocational training is required, and how best it can be used. Yes, next. Next, please. This all, again, I was telling you, let's not go into it. These are all, again, various under the NDPS Act, how drugs are a criminal, then crime. Then next page, next page. Next, Pradeep. We're not going into the details of NDPS Act. All these are some of the policies with regard to, as I told you, that broadly the drug abuse prevention in the country involves 3 strategies. That is drug demand reduction, which is managed by Ministry of Social Justice, the nodal ministry, and Ministry of Health, which provides all the medical management. Then you have this. So this Ministry of Drug Demand Reduction, it runs through our the nodal ministry of social justice, and we have about 350 NGOs in the country, nearly about 400 and odd centers, treatment centers, where we are giving funding to NGOs, about 15 bedded to 30 bedded centers. I mean, we in the sense I was, not now. Okay, so the so these NGOs all over the country, we have about 400 and odd treatment centers of 15 bedded and 30 bedded centers, which is mostly residential, inpatient. Then it involves a package of services starting from medical treatment to psychosocial therapies and educative measures and rehabilitation programs, vocational training, follow-up, aftercare services, all that as a capsule program, which depends upon the individual, the type of addiction, the type of, the type of addiction and the type of services that is required, a planned way that is being done, but how far, to what extent the NGOs do, and how far the treatment centers are working is something which is, again, one has to really see, and we have been seeing some good NGOs are there, some black sheep are there. So this goes on. Okay, next slide. This is regarding the capacity, like the number of NGOs that we have. Total bed strength is about 14,500. Number of patients. See, actually, what's happening is the number of the volume of drug addiction or addicts are increasing so much that we are not able to offer the services that is required. This is hardly 400 treatment centers of Ministry of Social Justice run by NGOs. On the other side, we have about 120 and odd de-addiction hospitals, government hospitals, where also de-addiction centers, de-addiction hospitals, where they're providing medical management, only medical management. Now they're also incorporating counseling in their medical hospitals. But basically, the most of the rehabilitation, outreach, identification, motivation, counseling, all these are mostly done in the NGO sector, where they have more access to the community, to the people, and they're in a better position to identify addicts, to refer cases, to bring them, to provide them treatment. So, but still, The number of treatment centers is very little in comparison to the number of addicts that are growing and increasing day by day all over the country, and especially in the state of Odisha. Yes, this is all. Next, yeah, next one. Next, Pradeep. Okay, leave this. This broadly I have covered it. So this is all about. Leave this, Pradeep. Leave this slide. There's another slide which I have. There's another PPT which I have shown you. No, not this also. This is also not required. There's another PPT which I showed you about the national survey. I think some of you must have seen the national survey finding, which I really don't like to repeat, but you can just have a glance at it. Pradeep, can you show that the other PPT?
Yes, sir.
See, now the government of India have taken a lot of initiatives. Now, recently, there's a National Center for Drug Abuse Prevention, which has been set up in the NISD under the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. And recently, about 5 years back or 6 years back, in 2018 or 19, there was a lot of, hue and cry, even in the parliament, where children are being affected badly of drug abuse, and it has become a big issue. And the Supreme Court has given orders to our ministry to assess the magnitude of the problem of substance use in the country. So accordingly, our ministry has taken up the responsibility with the technical support of Ministry of Health, NDDCE, National Drug Dependence Treatment Center, and conducted a national survey. And these are some of the survey results which was done sometime in 2019 and released on 19th only, I suppose. Yeah. Then so this is basically the major findings of which is again the projected estimates. The percentage of drug users, substance users is broadly given, and here they have been categorized. Like here you see that 16 crore users are alcoholic users as per this is done through a national household survey. Sampling survey they have done all over the country. Every state has been covered, every UT has been covered, and they have meticulously done this national household survey, as well as another system called RDS, responsive driven sampling. Both the highly technical modalities of conducting the study was done, and quite a good figures. The drug scenario in the country has come, and these are some of the results. The alcohol use in India, as you find that this is again a projected 14.6% of the population. You find that 16 crore users are alcohol users. They are all alcohol users. That means they're not abusing. They just take some time, or maybe more, or maybe less, or maybe regular, or occasional, or social, or maybe an addict. These are the categories. 16 crore users are there in the country, 14.6 alcohol users. Then you find that problem users, that what I was telling you about the people who are on a regular basis, they take, on a regular basis, they tend to consume alcohol. So they are about 5.7 crores. Then the worst part is you have nearly about 3 crore dependents, 2.9 crore dependent users. 2.9 crore dependent users. Whereas you must have seen the last page of what ministry is giving, nearly about 2 lakhs in a year. We are able to serve the addicts. 2 lakh addicts only are being served with all the 450 treatment centers which we are working. So where is 2.9 crores and where is 2 lakhs in a year? So this is something which there's a lot of gap between the service and the problem. The problem is huge. The services available is very less. So that's the trend now. Now next. Go ahead. Then there is this cannabis. That is bhang and charas and ganja and all that. You find that 2.8%, 3.1 crores, 3 crore users are there of bhang and ganja. That is nearly about 2.8% of the total population. And problem users are about 72 lakhs. And the dependent users, those who are totally dependent on it, are about 25 lakh dependent users. who depend totally on ganja. Basically, it is ganja that is leads to dependence. They go on, like you go on anywhere on the slums or on the parks and all that, you find that they are all there who you find that they're all ganja users. Okay, this is all about the cannabis use, cannabis plant. This is cannabis sativa plant, and that's it. The next is next. Opioid. Opioid is something which is really very dangerous, which is becoming a big problem. And they are, as I told you, opioid is not easily treatable, not easily, I mean, in the sense that these people, high rate of relapse is there. Relapse is there. So for them, the problem again, as you see that there are about 2.3 crore users are there. I mean, they might be using occasionally or whatever it might be. Then you have a regular user, which is about 77 lakhs. Then there is this 28 lakh dependent users. 28 lakh dependent users is something which is very big in a country and which is very dangerous. I mean, see, this is only a survey, a sample survey. And if you talk about the magnitude, I mean, it must be heavy in the country. So it's all, so this is again, the service in comparison to the need there's a large gap. Next, Pradeep. Yeah, you have this sedatives and inhalants. Sedatives is something which diazepam, disalpraza, all these kind of things, which are used. Even codeine, cough syrups, and all that. The current use is about 1 crore, which is also not less, and we have about 11 lakh people who are dependent on this. Next. Then inhalant use, you have this inhalants is this, as I told you, the petrol, diesel, or maybe the fluids, the steno, that what is that called, whatever fluids that they use. All those are being used by street children, especially in the slums, and even to the extent of also school children also. So there's a lot of tendency to abuse inhalants. So you have about 77 lakh users, about problem users are about 22, and about 8.5 lakh dependent users. See here again, dependent, when you're talking about dependent, see here again, the children, see, if you find on the right side of the slide, you find that the children 10 to 17 years, you find 1.17% of the total are users. So this is something which we really have to think of it. This is the population which are becoming victims of substance use, and they start. These are what we call it as gateway drugs. So they'll end up with high drugs. Okay, next. These are cocaine and ATS, and these are all mostly party drugs where you hear a lot of stories. We heard of that Shah Rukh Khan's son, like any of those, so many stories, whatever is happening because of the cocaine, ATS availability. And of course, hallucinogens is something which is, again, many people use it, mandrax and LSDs and all that. So this is the use is this, and the quantum of work also is shown it. Next. So finally, this is the findings. This is just to give some kind of insights. This is not a full-fledged, thorough. I mean that that the figures shown are absolute. That's not the thing. This is a survey done by household survey as well as the RTS, and the major findings is that alcohol, cannabis, and opiates are the major substances of use in our country. First is alcohol, followed by cannabis, that is bhang, ganja, and all that. The third is opiates. Then there's a wide variations across various states in abusing drugs. Andhra is one big state where a lot of consumption of alcohol and drugs are taken. Similarly, in UP and most probably in other states, there's a whole lot of things. You can get this in. If you go to the website and browse, you'll be able to get all this. Then naturally, the men are the more vulnerable to drug use. Then the children also are getting affected by drugs. It's all about this national survey. Okay, so with this national survey done, then and with the order of the Supreme Court, we have set up, I mean, the ministry has set up what we call it as National Action for NAPDDR, a National Action Policy, National Policy for Drug Demand Reduction, where a lot of activities are taken and where the focus was on children, because it has come to the light of Parliament that abuse is taking place a lot, and then again you have this Supreme Court order, and with that we the focus also is now on increasing the treatment centers, in providing a lot of preventive activities, and focus on more on children and youth, which is becoming a major issue. Okay, so this is all in a nutshell. I told you, it goes on. Alcohol is such a big problem, and addiction is such a big problem that you can have a lot of. I mean, on each drug you can talk a lot of things. So with this, I end up. If any questions, please ask. I hope I have not taken beyond your time. I must have. I'm sorry. Oh, already 8. Any questions?
Thank you so much, sir. But it was a nice presentation, and many things we did not know. Actually, we came to know from your presentation. So I believe all participants present in today's session might have understood so many new things. Actually, it is another arena which the layman cannot understand. Other people can only understand, those who are working in that area. And out of your vast experience, you told us so many things. So now I request from the audience, if any question, anything, anyhow. I think we have Dr. Simanchal Ranjit. Dr. Simanchal Ranjit, sir, can you hear me?
Yes, Pradeep. Good evening.
Sir, Dr. Simanchal Ranjit is currently working as a lawyer in Odisha High Court, Cuttack, Odisha. I would request Dr. Ranjit to put some input, since he is working in that field. Might maybe he can put some more inputs. Please, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Pradeep, for this opportunity. In fact, thank you, Dr. Sunil Kumar. It's quite interesting and fascinating. In fact, a large amount of information you have given to us as a practitioner lawyer, because so many cases I'm handling on the NDPS Act. And then it is in the Sessions Court, the trial is going on. And some ideas I have, but mostly the amount of information you have heard, it is not within this law. It's very much inadequate in the law. These are not addressed. Actually, it needs so much reformation this in the NDPS Act itself. So fine. Actually, I'd like to know. I don't want to put the this jurisprudence or legal aspect of it, because it's most of your psychosocial and then your vital and large experiences and you are having. But out of my experience in dealing with such cases, I'd like to know, you used a word kick. I am attached by that word. I think that is the main issue I find, that word kick you used. Am I right,
Yeah.
Dr. Kumar?
Yeah.
I think
it's not that.
Yeah, that was the
street word language, no? Kick. I
exactly.
kick. I get a.
Yeah, I understand. That's a kind of excitement, or the point where it starts altogether, that everybody wants to have a kick. We have a movie also, one Salman Khan was promoting.
Yes.
Yeah, that kick. So actually, I would like to know when it starts. Actually, this point. Let's say the word kick, and then I'm a father of my growing up daughter also, and then the adolescent. The statistics you have provided, it's a very, very alarming to each and every family members of us, the way it is growing. And then I'm shocked by this. I'm practicing it, the law, but the reality, I'm quite away from the situation, what is happening. So I'd like to know about, out of your experience, that how you'd suggest to the parents regarding the alternative of kicks. The kick the adolescents or the They want to have something excitement, something new to their life. How we can prevent this such negative aspects of this kick? Okay, you are proactive and positively you are growing up, and you want to do something, the excitement and the aspiration, that is one part of it. That is number one. Number two is, could you a little bit highlight something about the marketing of these substances, psychotropic substances or contrabands and all? See, the easy amount of what the people are caught in the jails, the prosecutions we do, they are all the suppliers, demand, the laborers, they are being caught. Whereas the master big fishes are sitting somewhere in the town, city, internationally, and entirely controlling this. They are never being caught that you are working there. Rather, only these few people, maybe they might be transportation or possession. Somewhere they are caught and then they're being prosecuted in the court of law. And then we know how the law is working, and they are getting bail, and then they go and then they start. But the supply part of it, the supply management, the demand part, I'd like to could you throw some highlight from my personal understanding, or maybe to go a little deeper into it, the marketing part of it. How does it being conducted, how it is done, and how the regulations or some kind of check and balances could be done. That is thing. And the other thing is, when you say alcohol is a problem, I don't think many think alcohol is a problem. When we talk about the other part, brown sugar and then all the other substances abuses, all these things that somehow becomes a problem. But alcohol, it becomes a, the 16 crore family people are having, and then only it becomes a part of it. I mean, just throw some practical experiences, or maybe throw some or suggest to each household of India and family members how they can at least start from the house itself in providing an alternative to the kicks that are adolescent girls or boys in the family they are growing up. Of course, if we are working as social worker in some slums or any schools and school social worker, and all the aspects are there, maybe I think this is what will be helpful for me and for others. So please, if I was able to communicate what actually you have to discuss.
First one, when you're
Thank
talking about this, thank you. Thanks for your interesting questions. The first one, which you're talking about, this cake and people becoming vulnerable, children becoming vulnerable to abuse and all that. Like I was telling you, one thing which is very important. It's not just a particular individual which will be able to help solve this problem, or a social worker who will. It's a team work. Okay, it's a team. It's all it's involved with many people. So maybe if at all a professional goes and helps the individual, it involves the family, it involves the school setting, it involves the community in which he comes from. So this is very important. So when we are talking about, I was telling you earlier also, most important is that in schools, teachers have got a very important role. When they find that something is different from this child in a classroom, and if he shows some abnormal behavior, either is not coming or is sleeping or is not able to concentrate, then there's something wrong with that person. Okay, and that teacher should be able to assess either through that boy's or girl's friends as to what is happening, what he's doing, and all that, or find out from his parents. That is one aspect. That is what we call it as early identification of addictive behavior. Okay, that's one thing. The second thing is, there's a concept called risk and protective factors. The risk factors are many. Okay, for any kind of addictive behavior, there is the certain risk factors, there are certain protective factors. Family is a very important protective factor, but that family, if it is having problems, if the father is a abuser who drinks alcohol, or otherwise he smokes, or otherwise sometimes with his friends, you might find him using ganja or something like that, or mother always a quarrelsome lady, not giving him proper support, or not taking care of the child, or neglecting the child. Then there comes the role of family. So that family environment, which is important. The community in which you live. Most of the slums, if you talk about the slum areas, slums, very unfortunate because of the environmental condition in the slum, either because of the economic conditions or because of the poor physical background or physical setup or whatever it might be, and with a lot of deviant categories of people involved in that community, in the slum community. There's this child who is vulnerable for this thing. And then another thing, as you were talking also about that issue of peddling. I mean, the thing you find a lot of small peddlers in most of the slums. They are the people who finds one particular individual catch hold of them. Then the network grows. The network of a small peddler from one child to another child, as it goes, and the network becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's how the drugs spread. Now, who is behind that? Nobody knows. Nobody is able to do. Even recently, I've been there. There was a plan for having a policy, a program for Bhubaneswar and city because it comes under the commissariat of, police commissariat. So they had a plan to do something for it. They are doing also. The police also is commissariat is doing something big also. They want it in a bigger way, in a better way, and all that. So that time there was a meeting, and I was also went there and participated in that. That time they were saying how bad it is. But one thing is again, the aptitude of the people also is very important. Like you cannot say that the person, the drug addict, he's an addict, he's a deviant behavior, he's going against the law, so he has to be punished. He cannot be considered as a human being. He cannot be considered that kind of attitude, no negative attitude. That will not serve the purpose of. Or you should accept him as a person and then start doing whatever is possible. So that is one thing. So what I'm trying to say is that there are a lot of risk factors involved, either in the family or in the community or in the school, or maybe he's been victim of abuse or teased or anything like that. So these are some of the things which, if he has got some friends around who abuses or something which is available or accessible to any of these drugs, like they can start off with tobacco, with chewing tobacco, with smoking, BD, then go on with what to say. A lot of people in the slums, you find that codeine. Even in schools also, you find that this is going on. Smoking is very common. Alcohol is becoming common. So that's something which we really have to think of, the risk and protective factor. And this requires really an effort. It's not an easy task. Working with alcohols is not at all an easy task, and it's very difficult to work with a family of an addict. If you go to a house and ask, your son is behaving like this, I think he's suffering from alcohol, the parents will deny. They will not accept. The denial is there with the parents. So how to deal with the denial? How to motivate the parents? Then go to the child. Then motivate that child. And then show him some options. Show him some better alternatives. So it's a process. So it involves time and effort and all that. That's one thing. The other thing is, you're talking about alcoholism. Alcoholism is a dependent substance. It's a very, very, very dependent. See, once you become an alcoholic, what we call it, addiction or dependent, is alcoholic is something which he cannot stay, because I have seen people who they start off as soon as they get up, they have to have drink. The morning drinking shows that he's an alcoholic. That means he's an addict. If you get up in the morning and start drinking, then he is an addict. And for the purpose of alcohol, to get his alcohol, she can do any amount of crimes. The crime is not because of other drugs. It's all because of alcohol. Like whatever crimes are taking place, you must have come across many of the clients. Most of them are all because of alcoholics only that a crime takes place. Of course, some of them who are put up in lockups and they're not given and all, they'll end up in. See, I have seen also children, they were sharing with me a child of 10 or 12-year-old boy. He was honestly put up in a lockup, taken to police station, put up in lockup. And then ultimately, they started beating him so badly that somehow or other he could able to get a small knife kind of thing, and he slashed the policeman 10 or 15 times and ran away from the police station. So this is how it is. So you're leading from one problem to another problem. So this is where you have to really, there are various things involved in it. So it's not, alcohol or addiction is such a big problem that you had to really deal with it in a proper plan, and that's how it is. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Kumar. Just only one line, if you permit, just yes or no. Recently there was in the news that they want to legalize the production of ganja, because this is part of socio-cultural part during this what kabaddi, all this walking time, Shiv Bhakt, this part of Hindu culture. So what do you support this, or what do you think about this?
Yeah, see, there is what I was talking about, the harm reduction concept. I told you, no, there is the drug demand reduction, there is this supply reduction, there is this harm reduction. Harm reduction concept is different, of course. It's again something to do with opioids and alcoholics and all that. But if you see, this is all some of the, best practice or somewhere successful in other countries that take place. In Indian culture, it should not be a difficult thing because we have in our culture, it's already there. Okay, bhang and ganja and all that. So, legalizing is no, I don't think it's bad. I don't think. That's why we call it decriminalizing all these. Taking cannabis and some restrictions, some regulatory measures should be there, but not that you can punish him to the extent like other hard drugs.
Other drugs. Okay.
Yeah, the drugs. Yeah,
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, welcome. Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much, sir. Actually, this is a
Okay.
really excellent question to ask. Like every family has a concern regarding their children, and sir has rightly pointed out that question. Anybody
Family background is very.
but any other participant, if they want to ask any question, please unmute yourself and ask if you have any question or any doubt.
I think it must have taken a long time. No, they must be tired of listening. Drugs.
We have with us Professor Asutosh Pradhan.
Oh, okay.
Presently,
He's a colleague of
working as a
mine.
professor in Himachal Pradesh.
He's the one who brought me here and introduced you.
So now I request Professor Pradhan, sir, please switch on your camera. Yes.
हाँ सर नमस्कार.
नमस्कार आशुतोष. बोलो.
हाँ ठीक. Actually, I wanted to know what is the spread of this drugs, means incidence of drug addiction across the country, state-wise, who are in the lead? Like we think that Punjab is in the lead, and
Punjab
Himachal
definitely.
Pradesh, after Punjab, Himachal Pradesh is also fast catching up. Maybe other states are there. Can you please throw some light on this? Because as a strategy, as a national policy, and also as a state policy, what we should be doing, because in Himachal Pradesh, what I saw that there are a lot of drug de-addiction centers started by private individuals. They do not have any experience in social work. They are not from the social work profession, and they have found this to be a very lucrative business of starting the drug de-addiction centers. And some of my students who passed out from Himachal Pradesh, Central University of Himachal Pradesh, they are working there, and they are getting very paltry sum as salary, 15,000, 12,000 to 15,000. And it is again
big,
this,
booming business.
This business again is becoming a very sorry state of affairs, because the policy makers, I think, are blind to this spread, and also our executive, I think they are also not getting any way out as to what could be a solution. I think professionalism on our part, professional social workers, is lacking. We should be running the show than private people trying to mint money out of this. I know through authentic sources that they are actually minting money.
Yes.
Your take on this, sir?
Yeah, that's true. What's happening is, unfortunately, how we have quacks in medical profession, like that, these treatment centers are mushrooming. And most of them do not have any professionalism. They only have they only know that there is this problem. They have an idea of what it is and all that. They get some more other some information. Then they start off little bit of capital or whatever is required. They start off on their own buildings, and then the centers now it is flourishing like anything. Most of these non-recognized, non-licensed centers are doing very well all over the country. So actually, there's a lot of hue and cry where this particular addiction and treatment should be under the purview of Mental Health Act. Okay, but Mental Health Act again is confined again to only psychiatrists and only medical management and those kind of things. So that's why there was a pressure also from our ministry that yes, NGOs, we have this. Our intervention is more of psychosocial intervention and not medical, not only medical. Medical is only a small component. If it is a major medical illness out of addiction, they will be referred to some hospital. But otherwise, the initial treatment that is required, like suppose if an alcoholic is there, he comes, we give him disulfiram and is given a medical treatment of 1 week or 10 days maximum, and he becomes normal. But again, the psychological dependence, the behavioral aspects, all that has to be touched, so that we give psychosocial intervention. So that is why we call this treatment module of about 3 months or 1 month or 2 months or whatever it is. And that includes also medical psychosocial therapies. So this is again because the government is identified certain NGOs and we are supporting them. But how far, to what extent the NGOs are working, that's a different aspect altogether. But many an NGO are doing good efforts. They are doing a lot of work. But these quacks, the doctors, the hospitals which are running, there's no, see, there's always, the government has been making all efforts to stop them, but it's just, it's like any other business that is going on. And the type of treatment is very bad. Treatment is, they are very harsh. They hit, they slap, they beat up the addict as if like an animal. They treat him in the center. And in spite of all that, because he's brought up from the family and brought to the treatment center, the family pays a lot of money. Like suppose if he has to stay for a period of 1 month and he has given treatment, many of the families also ready to put him in a treatment hospital, not in their house. They're happy there, now putting him off there in that treatment center rather than putting him in the hospital. And there, even that the personnel in the treatment center beats the client, the patient. These people, parents are not bothered about it. So this is the trend which is going on.
Yes.
That's really unfortunate.
Yeah.
And I have seen also, like suppose in Northeast, what is happening is there's a concept called the chain the legs. They chain the legs and they are put the whole day, night like that only, without more movement. Because there's also a risk, jumping towards the wall, jumping, and also these things are these things are happening. Still government is making all efforts to identify and to check and put them, cancer, whatever possible from the government side. That's one thing. The other thing which you're talking about, the data part, the data part, I best advise is that now I cannot tell you quickly as to what this thing, the trend in, like I told you, Andhra is one of the big source of abuse, UP, Punjab, Rajasthan and all that, and Himachal to some extent. But since you're staying in Himachal, you find a lot of people around and all that. But that way, I don't think Himachal is such a big problem, but there are major other big states, where they are vulnerable and where there's this problem. States like UP and AP and all that are much vulnerable. That's what I studied. And this information, if you want to know state-wise this thing, you will be able to get that in the National Survey and the website. You'll be able to get that.
So there is a question, I think, put by Debashish. Sir, any job option after MSW? After MSW, if you want to work in the
I told the whole lot of activity. Like suppose if in addiction management, professionals are very important. You start from your, I told you, early intervention, early identification, outreach, drop-in centers, counseling, motivational enhancement. All these are skills, of a professional, and professional social worker is vital for addiction management. Because the doctor's role is very limited. Doctor's role will be only medical supervision, medical this thing. But the rest of the thing, working with family therapy, group therapy, individual therapy, counseling, all these, which you talk about, all theory, that is all applicable here. If you go to a treatment center, only thing is application. How best you can apply, how best you can be with the client, understand things. Yeah.
Pradeep, if you can allow me just to question maybe clarification from Dr. Kumar as well as Professor Ashutosh Pradhan. Do we have a specialization on management of drug addicts? What Dr. Kumar was explaining, that very widely they are being treated and all. In social work, there are choice-based options are there. Like last time you heard the Dalit social work, STSU social work. There are different fields of social work. Now, relating to this, what Dr. Sunil Kumar has presented, relating to that, do we have an option like community organization or group work, or I mean, different fields of social work like that? So similarly, what one MSW student or MSW professional was asking, whether there are some job opportunities. For example, with the MSW in your semester pattern, do we have such course what Dr. Kumar presented today? A complete option, maybe 50 marks or 100 marks, something like that. Do we have a course in our MSW or BSW, something like that? Professor Pradhan can explain this.
I think Dr. Sunil Kumar can throw more light on it about my institute and the MSW course which we offer here. We, of course, from the beginning since 2010, we have been offering a course on drug abuse and drug reduction. But that is only a 4-credit course, and I'm sure it may not lead to a specialization, because for specialization you require at least 16 credit or 16 credit worth courses. That means 4 into 4, which will help in giving a specialization. I do not have information as to whether such a specialization exists like you have in labor welfare or medical psychiatric social work or correctional social work. Many of these specializations I think are almost non-existent, apart from the southern part of the country where medical and psychiatric social work is being offered. I would request Dr. Sunil Kumar to throw more light on this.
Yeah, actually, in fact, this was one of my interests always. I was trying like how best addiction management can be a part of. We have actually, in fact, developed a 1-year course. At one time, ministry wanted this addiction management as such, because in many other countries, like US and Canada and many other countries, they have these specialized courses, a 1-year diploma and all that. Not that part of MSW. Now, when it comes to us, so that was there always. In fact, we developed a thing, then suddenly dropped the idea that is not feasible. So we started out with the 3-month course, certificate course on addiction management. So that is basically for the service providers who are working in a treatment center, who initially joined the project, also the counselor, the social worker. We developed a module of 3-month course, and we are providing them training, which 2 months of theoretical and 1 month of field placement and all that. But when it comes as an academic thing, like, see, we have papers. There is no special papers as such in any of in the country as a separate addiction management, except that institutes like TIS and all, they start off with some kind of courses. I don't think they have also started off separately as a course as addiction management, but on old age, I mean, geriatric care and all those kind of things they have started. Diploma courses, not this thing. But as a part of the lessons or chapters or whatever it is there in. We have one course called elective, or it can be an elective form of an elective, or it can be in form of specialization depending upon the school or social work, where they have this correctional social work, which includes all this, like let us say prison welfare, probation, immoral traffic, juvenile justice, and addiction also. All these come under, yes, under the correctional social work. So that is more broader in it. And also, if you talk about, there is a paper called social problems, which we have. In that also we have as a lesson addiction. But most of these talk about the problem, not the intervention specific. Interventions, if you want to be very specific, it is no such courses available. But otherwise, the medical and psychiatric social workers, they are capable enough to take part to be a practitioner for addiction management because of the background that they have, the counseling that they have, the outreach that they have, the type of motivational enhancement that they have to do, whether for a normal patient or whether for an addict or for anything. Okay, so the medical and psychiatric social work is like many of the people in hospitals and all that, you have the medical and psychiatric social worker who are working as counselors or medical social workers in these treatment centers, in this government treatment centers. Some of those.
I feel this medical psychiatrist social worker dealing with all the general problems, including family issues.
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
I would suggest Professor Pradhan and all of you are engaged in the academic field. Why don't you develop a course, addiction management, what Dr. Sunil Kumar present, and it would be like labor welfare, correctional social work, all the fields of social work. Maybe
The
can
job,
be an
know,
elective course or 1-2 credit, whatever the academic way we can handle. It's a very practical thing which will be helpful for the MSWs having this knowledge can apply for such drug addict center, and that will be very much credible for increase their skill. I mean the CV or resume. I think that's a very important area from today's discussion I can find. Thank
there
you.
are two gray areas. One is what addiction is not an easy problem. You cannot come out of addiction. As I told you, most relapse cases, most of those 80-90% of, like suppose alcoholic dependence or suppose opiate dependence, they're mostly relapse cases. Okay, 70% of them get relapse. That is another problem. The second is acceptability of the profession. How many people accept really this profession? And how feasible, how conducive, I mean, in terms of jobs, in terms of professional input. I mean, they should recognize this as a profession. Still that, see, like they say that psychiatrists will not, they have their own agenda. Psychiatrists think that social workers are not meant for this. This is a mental health issue. And so that tussle is there, that tussle is going on. So that's why the status quo is still like that of professional social workers, where we are in a middle level being a social worker or a counselor or something of that sort, but not as a specialized, like a doctor, I am a addiction manager, that kind of thing status is just not possible here. Like in countries like USA and all, every small thing is even a career practitioner is a very important person. Okay, like that, even addiction management is a very big, important person. But in countries, and with this all vast population and limited resources and our scope.
Right. Yeah. Taking a cue from taking a cue from Dr. Simanchal, I find that there are a lot of participants here who have not dropped out. It is unusual. I think this lecture of Dr. Sunil Kumar is quite intriguing and very interesting for all of us. And the discussions which are turning out also is quite interesting. And since I am from the university system, and all of you must be aware to an extent that the National Education Policy 2020, which is referred to also as the new education policy, it has given a scope for adding courses which are referred to as value added courses. So beyond the syllabus, if there is a, let us say, an 80 credit course where 20 credit for each semester, at the master's level, you have 80 credit in all the total taken together, you have 80 credit. So beyond 80 credit also, you can offer value added courses, as Dr. Simanchal was pointing. So any student from the same department or university, or any student from other departments in the same university or from outside, in blended mode, they can also take up this program. So we now have an added opportunity for our students, master's level, undergraduate level students like BSW students, who can take up these value added courses. I think if the universities and departments of social work can utilize this opportunity which has been provided to them under this new education policy, I think the pointer that has been made by Dr. Simanchal, it can be fulfilled. And those who are interested in this sector, they can benefit out of it. Our Honorable Vice Chancellor has been after us to asking us to add more and more value-added courses so that uh, wide scope is offered to the students of social work or those who have passed out and are practicing in this field so that they can get better opportunities as Debasis was requesting whether there is any job opportunity. Yes, there are plenty of job opportunities. The problem is we are allowing non-professionals to run such centers. It is you and I and all of us together, we should be running these centers, drug de-addiction centers. We can do a much better job. At least we will not start hitting and beating the clients. We know that we have professionally sound people grounded in values. So I think we can do a better job. Only thing is we lack initiative as professional social workers. We should come forward. You wouldn't believe that one of my students who passed out 3 years back, he has started a drug de-addiction center in Himachal Pradesh, and he's doing a good job, but still he has a long way to go. I visited his center, and still he has to be much more a professional, much more in the true sense. But at least those I won't call them patients, those people who are coming for de-addiction in his center, they are uh, um, getting a more dignified treatment, and I think it is a worthy initiative. All those people who are present here, my request would be that you should also find out ways and opportunities, become a social entrepreneur, start such a drug de-addiction center if it is your area of interest, so that such people can get a better treatment. I think we can do a better job than others. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, that's true.
Let Gyanalok, Mr. Pradeep take a lead, and with this lecture today, develop a module sent to Professor Pradhan and start it, something practical. This is what Dr. Kumar said. There is no such courses offered in any of the universities as far as his expertise knowledge is concerned. So since today's such discussion is going on, take a lead, let Gyanalok prepare a draft module, or you say the syllabus, sent to Professor Sunil Pradhan. He can publish even an article on this, take expertise view from Dr. Sunil Kumar, and let us introduce in some of the universities in institutions in Odisha itself or in Andhra, and then that could be, I think, a good way to move forward. Thank you.
Yes. We'll try for this. Thank you so much, sir. Any other question anybody asks?
All must be tired. They must be feeling hungry. Already 8:45.
No, sir. Actually, my earlier experiences of this lecture series, Saturday lecture series, says that your talk has been quite inspiring and informative, and no one is dropping out. Very few people are dropping out. They are very much there and attentively listening to your talk and our discussion.
It's so nice. Thank you.
Sir, what Ashutosh sir told, actually, a lot of informations, lot of stories, and a lot of things we came to learn from this session. And we are really thankful to you, sir. Out of your vast experience, you told us many things. And as you told, we'll again plan for number of series regarding this issue, particularly drugs, alcohol, all these things.
Half an hour weekly or something like that. After your this thing, it will be very good. You can call experts from AIMS. We can call experts. I've got a lot of people who are in the subject matter experts. I can call them. They can take up the sessions. Okay, from AIMS, from NDDCE, from different parts of the country, no issue. Even from NIMHANS also, we can request. So thank you, Pradeep. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Ashutosh. Thanks, Pradeep. And thanks to all of you. Thanks to all the audience.
We'll again meet in the next Saturday at 6:30 p.m.
And I want to thank
Sure,
the
sir.
audience especially because of waiting patiently and listening. Thank you, Pradeep. Thank you,
Our
Astush.
pleasure,
Thanks.
sir.
Very
Our pleasure to have you and listen